And we're continuing with The Night Before Christmas by Nikolai Gogol. Meanwhile, Vakula, having run through several streets, stopped to catch his breath. Why am I running, in fact? He thought. All is lost. I'll try one more way. I'll go to Pachi, Patsuk, the Zaporozhets. They say he knows all the devils and can do whatever he likes. I'll go. My soul will perish anyway. And at that, the devil, who had lain for a long time without moving, leaped for joy inside the sack. But the blacksmith, supposing he'd caused this movement by somehow catching the sack with his arm, punched it with his hefty fist, gave it a toss on his shoulder, and went off to Pachi Patsuk. This Pachi Patsuk had indeed been a Zaporozhets once, but whether he had been driven out of the Zaporozhye or had run away on his own, no one knew. He had been living in Dikanka for a long time, 10 years, maybe 15. At first, he had lived like a real Zaporozhets. Didn't work, slept 3/4 of the day, ate like 6 mowers, and drank nearly a whole bucket at one gulp. There was room enough for it all, however, because Patsuk, though short, was of quite stout girth. Besides, the balloon trousers he wore were so wide that however long a stride he took, his legs were completely invisible, and it looked as though a wine barrel was moving down the street. Maybe that was why they nicknamed him Pachi. A few days after his arrival in the village, everybody already knew he was a wizard. If anyone was sick with something, he at once called in Patsuk. And if Patsuk had only to whisper a few words, and it was as if the illness was taken away. If it happened that a hungry squire got a fishbone caught in his throat, Patsuk could hit him on the back with a fist so skillfully that the bone would go where it belonged without causing any harm to the squire's throat. Of late he had rarely been seen anywhere. The reason for that was laziness, perhaps, or else the fact that it was becoming more difficult each year for him to get through the door, so people had to go to him themselves if they had need of him. The blacksmith opened the door, not without timidity, and saw Patsuk sitting on the floor, Turkish fashion, before a small barrel with a bowl of noodles standing on it. This bowl was placed, as if on purpose, at the level of his mouth. Without lifting a finger, he bent his head slightly to the bowl and sipped up the liquid, occasionally catching noodles in his teeth. No, Vakula thought to himself, this one's lazier than Chaub. He at least eats with a spoon, but this one won't even lift his arm. Patsuk must have been greatly occupied with his noodles, because he seemed not to notice at all the coming of the blacksmith, who, as he stepped across the threshold, gave him a very low bow. I have come for your kindness, Patsuk, Vakula said, bowing again. Fat Patsuk raised his head again and began slurping up noodles. They say, meaning no offense, the blacksmith said, plucking up his courage, I mention it not so as to insult you in any way, that you have some kinship with the devil. Having uttered these words, Vakula became frightened, thinking he had expressed himself too directly and hadn't softened his strong words enough, and expecting Patsuk to seize the barrel with the bowl and send it straight at his head. He stepped aside a little and shielded himself with his sleeve, so that the hot liquid from the noodles wouldn't splash in his face. But Patsuk shot him a glance and again began slurping up noodles. The heartened blacksmith ventured to continue. I've come to you, Patsuk. May God grant you all good things in abundance, and bread proportionately. The blacksmith knew how to put in a fashionable word now and then. He had acquired the knack in Poltava while he was painting the chief's wooden fence. My sinful soul is bound to perish. Nothing in the world helps. Come what may, I must ask for help from the devil himself. Well, Patsuk, said the blacksmith, seeing his invariable silence, what am I to do? If it's the devil you need, go to the devil, replied Patsuk, raising his eyes and continuing to pack away the noodles. That's why I came to you, replied the blacksmith, giving him a low bow. Apart from you, I don't think anybody in the world knows the way to him. Not a word from Patsuk, who was finishing the last of the noodles. Do me a kindness, don't refuse, the blacksmith insisted. Some pork or sausage or buckwheat flour, well, or linen or millet, whatever there may be if needed. As is customary among good people, we won't be stingy. Tell me at least, let's say, how to find the way to him. He needn't go far who has the devil on his back, Patsuk pronounced indifferently without changing his position. Vakula fixed his eyes on him as if he had the explanation of these words written on his forehead. What is he saying? His face inquired wordlessly, and his half-open mouth was ready to swallow the first word like a noodle, but Patsuk kept silent. Here Vakula noticed there were no longer entire noodles or barrel before the man. Instead, 2 wooden bowls stood on the floor, one filled with dumplings, the other with sour cream. His thoughts and eyes involuntarily turned to these dishes. Let's see how Patsuk is going to eat those dumplings, he said to himself. He surely won't want to lean over and slurp them like the noodles. It's not the right way. A dumpling has to be dipped in sour cream first. No sooner had he thought it than Patsuk opened his mouth wide, looked at the dumplings, and opened his mouth still wider. Just then a dumpling flipped out of the bowl, plopped into the sour cream, turned over on the other side, jumped up, and went straight into Patsuk's mouth. Patsuk ate it and again opened his mouth, and in went another dumpling in the same way. He was left only with the work of chewing and swallowing. See what a marvel, thought the blacksmith, opening his mouth in surprise, and noticing straight away that a dumpling was going into his mouth as well, and had already smeared his lips with sour cream. Pushing the dumpling away and wiping his lips, the blacksmith began to reflect on what wonders happen in the world, and what clever things a man could attain to by means of the unclean powers, observing at the same time that Patsuk alone could help him. I'll bow to him again and let him explain it to me. Though what the devil, today is a hungry Kotya, and he eats dumplings, non-Lenten dumplings. What a fool I am, really, standing here and heaping up sins. Retreat! And the pious blacksmith rushed headlong from the cottage. However, the devil, who had been sitting in the sack and rejoicing in anticipation, couldn't stand to see such a fine prize slip from his fingers. As soon as the blacksmith put the sack down, he jumped out and sat astride his neck. A chill fell over the blacksmith. Frightened and pale, he did not know what to do. He was just about to cross himself, but the devil, leaning his doggy muzzle to his right ear, said, "It's me, your friend. I'll do anything for a friend and comrade. I'll give you as much money as you like," he squealed into his left ear. "Oksana will be ours today," he whispered, poking his muzzle toward his right ear again. The blacksmith stood pondering. "Very well," he said finally. "For that price, I am ready to be yours." The devil clasped his hands and began bouncing for joy on the blacksmith's neck. "Now I've got you, blacksmith," he said to himself. "Now I'll take revenge on you, my sweet fellow, for all your paintings and tall tales against devils. What will my comrades say now when they find out that the most pious man in the whole village is in my hands?" Here the devil laughed with joy, thinking how he was going to mock all the tailed race in hell, and how furious the lame devil would be, reputed the foremost conniver among them. "Well, Vakula," the devil squealed, still sitting on his neck, as if fearing he might run away. You know nothing is done without a contract." "I'm ready," said the blacksmith. "With you, I've heard, one has to sign in blood. Wait, I'll get a nail from my pocket." Here he put his arm behind him and seized the devil by the tail. "See what a joker," the devil cried out, laughing. Well, enough now. Enough of these pranks. Wait, my sweet fellow, cried the blacksmith, and how will you like this? With these words he made the sign of the cross, and the devil became as meek as a lamb. Just wait, he said, dragging him down by the tail. I'll teach you to set to good people and honest Christians to sinning. Here the blacksmith, without letting go of the tail, jumped astride him and raised his hand to make the sign of the cross. Have mercy, Vakula, the devil moaned pitifully. I'll do anything you want. Anything, only leave my soul in peace. Don't put the terrible cross on me. Ah, so that's the tune you sing now, you cursed German. Now I know what to do. Take me on your back this minute, do you hear? Carry me like a bird. Where to? Said the rueful devil. To Petersburg, straight to the Tsarista. And the blacksmith went numb with fear, feeling himself rising into the air. For a long time Oksana stood, pondering the blacksmith's strange words. Something inside her was already telling her she had treated him too cruelly. What if he had indeed decided on something terrible? Who knows, maybe in his sorrow he'll make up his mind to fall in love with another girl, and out of vexation call her the first beauty in the village. But no, he loves me. I'm so pretty. He wouldn't trade me for anyone. He's joking, pretending. Before 10 minutes go by, he'll surely come look at me. I really am too stern. I must let him kiss me, as if reluctantly. It will make him so happy, and the frivolous beauty was already joking with her girlfriends. Wait, said one of them. The blacksmith forgot his sacks. Look, what frightful sacks. He doesn't go caroling as we do. I think he's got whole quarters of lamb thrown in there, and sausages and loaves of bread probably beyond count. Magnificent. We can eat as much as we want all through the feast days. Are those the blacksmith's sacks? Oksana picked up. Let's quickly take them to my house and have a better look at what he's stuffed into them. Everyone laughingly accepted this suggestion. But we can't lift them, the whole crowd suddenly cried, straining to move the sacks. Wait, said Oksana, let's run and fetch a sled. We can take them on a sled. And the crowd ran to fetch a sled. The prisoners were very wary of sitting in the sacks, though the deacon had made himself a big hole with his finger. If it hadn't been for the people, he might have found a way to get out. But to get out of the sack in front of everybody, to make himself a laughing-stock, this held him back. And he decided to wait, only groaning slightly under Chaub's uncouth boots. Chaub himself had no less of a wish for freedom, feeling something under him that was terribly awkward to sit on. But once he heard of his daughter's decision, he calmed down and no longer wanted to get out, considering that to reach his house, one would have to walk at least 100 paces, maybe 2. If he got out, he would have to straighten his clothes, button his coat, fasten his belt. So much work. And the hat with ear flaps had stayed at Soloka's. Better let the girls take him on a sled. But it happened not at all as Chaub expected. Just as the girls went off to fetch the sled, the skinny chum was coming out of the tavern, upset and in low spirits. The woman who kept the tavern was in no way prepared to give him credit. He had waited in hopes some pious squire might come and treat him, but, as if on purpose, all the squires stayed home like honest Christians, and ate kutya in the bosom of their families, reflecting on the corruption of morals and the wooden heart of the Jewess who sold the drinks. The chum wandered into the sacks and stopped in amazement. Look what sacks somebody's left in the road, he said, glancing around. There must be pork in them. Somebody's had real luck to get so much stuff for his caroling. What frightful sacks. Suppose they're stuffed with buckwheat loaves and lard biscuits. That's good enough. If it's nothing but flatbread, that's already something the Jewess gives a dram of vodka for each flatbread. I'll take it quick before anybody sees me. Here he hauled the sack with Chaub and the deacon onto his shoulders, but felt it was too heavy. No, it's too heavy to carry alone, he said. But here, as if on purpose, comes the weaver, Shapovlenko. Good evening, Ostap. Good evening, said the weaver, stopping. Where are you going? Dunno, wherever my legs take me. Help me, good man, to carry these sacks. Somebody went caroling, then dropped them in the middle of the road. We'll divide the goods 50-50. Sacks? And what's in the sacks? Wheat loaves or flatbread? I suppose there's everything in them. Here they hastily pulled sticks from a wattle fence, put a sack on them, and carried them on their shoulders. Where are we taking it? To the tavern? The weaver asked as they went. That's what I was thinking, to the tavern, but the cursed Jewess won't believe us. She'll think we stole it. Besides, I just came from the tavern. We'll take it to my place. No one will be in our way. My wife isn't home. You're sure she's not home? The prudent weaver asked. Thank God we've still got some wits left, said the chum. The devil if I'd go where she is. I suppose she'll be dragging about with the women till dawn. Who's there? Cried the chum's wife, hearing the noise in the front hall, produced by the two friends coming in with the sack, and she opened the door. The chum was dumbfounded. There you go, said the weaver, dropping his arms. The chum's wife was a treasure of a sort not uncommon in the wide world. Like her husband, she hardly ever stayed home, but spent almost all her days fawning on some cronies and wealthy old women, praised and ate with great appetite, and fought with her husband only in the mornings, which was the one time she occasionally saw him. Their cottage was twice as old as the local Scrivener's balloon trousers. The roof lacked straw in some places. Only remnants of the wattle fence were to be seen, because no one ever took a stick along against dogs when leaving the house, intending to pass by the chum's kitchen garden instead and pull one out of the fence. 3 days would go by without the stove being lit. Whatever the tender spouse wheedled out of good people, she hid the best she could from her husband, and she often arbitrarily took his booty if he hadn't managed to drink it up in the tavern. The chum, despite his perennial sang-froid, did not like yielding to her, and therefore almost always left the house with 2 black eyes, and his dear better half trudged off to tell the old women about her husband's outrages and the beatings she suffered from him. Now you can picture yourself how thrown off the weaver and the chum were by her unexpected appearance. Setting the sack down, they stepped in front of it, covering it with their coat skirts. But it was too late. The chum's wife, though she saw poorly with her old eyes, nevertheless noticed the sack. Well, that's good, she said, with the look of an exultant hawk. It's good you got so much for your caroling. That's what good people always do. Only no, I suppose you picked it up somewhere. Show me this minute, do you hear? Show me your sack this minute. Right this minute. The hairy devil can show it to you, not us, said the chum, assuming a dignified air. What business is this of yours, said the weaver. We got it for caroling, not you. No, you're going to show me, you worthless drunkard, the wife exclaimed, hitting the tall chum on the chin with her fist and going for the sack. But the weaver and the chum valiantly defended the sack and forced her to retreat. Before they had time to recover, the spouse came back to the front hall, this time with a poker in her hands. She nimbly whacked her husband on the hands and the weaver on the back with the poker, and was now standing beside the sack. What, we let her get to it? Said the weaver, coming to his senses. What do you mean we let her? Why did you let her? The chum said, with sang-froid. Your poker must be made of iron, the weaver said after a short silence, rubbing his back. My wife bought a poker at the fair last year, paid 25 kopecks. It's nothing, doesn't even hurt. Meanwhile, the triumphant spouse, setting a tallow lamp on the floor, untied the sack and peeked into it, but her old eyes, which had made out the sack so well, must have deceived her this time. There's a whole boar in there, she cried out, clapping her hands for joy. A boar. Do you hear? A whole boar, the weaver nudged the chum. It's all your fault. No help for it, the chum said, shrugging. No help? Don't stand there. Let's take the sack from her. Come on, away with you. Away, it's our boar, the weaver shouted, bearing down on her. Get out, cursed woman. It's not your goods, said the chum said, coming closer. The spouse again took hold of the poker, and just then Chaub climbed out of the sack and stood in the middle of the hall, stretching, like a man who has just awakened from a long sleep. The chum's wife gave a cry, slapping her skirts, and they all involuntarily opened their mouths. Why did she say a boar, the fool? That's not a boar, said the chum, goggling his eyes. See what a man got thrown into the sack, said the weaver, backing away in fear. Say what you like, you can even burst. But it's the doing of the unclean powers. He wouldn't even fit through the window. It's my chum, cried the chum, looking closer. And who did you think it was? Said Chaub, smiling. A nice trick I pulled on you, eh? And you probably wanted him to eat me as pork. Wait, I've got good news for you. There's something else in this sack. If not a boar, then surely a piglet or some other live thing. Something's been moving under me all the time. The weaver and the chum rushed to the sack. The mistress of the house seized it from the other side, and the fight would have started again if the deacon, seeing there was nowhere to hide, hadn't climbed out of the sack. Here's another one, the weaver exclaimed in fright. Devil knows how this world. It makes your head spin. Not sausages or biscuits. They throw people into sacks. It's the deacon, said Chaub, more astonished than anyone else. Well now, that's Slaka for you, putting us into sacks. That's why she's got a house full of sacks. Now, I see it all. She had 2 men sitting in each sack, and I thought I was the only one That's Slaka for you. The girls were a bit surprised to find 1 sack missing. No help for it. This one will be enough for us, Oksana prattled. They all took hold of the sack and heaved it onto the sled. The headman decided to keep quiet, reasoning that if he shouted for them to untie the sack and let him out, the foolish girl would run away, thinking the devil was sitting in it, and he would be left out in the street, maybe till the next day. The girls, meanwhile, all took each other's hands and flew like the wind, pulling the sled over the creaking snow. Many of them sat on the sled for fun. Some got on the headman himself. The headman resolved to endure everything. They finally arrived, opened the doors to the house and the front hall wide, with loud laughter dragged the sack inside. Let's see what's in it, they all shouted, and hastened to untie the sack. Here the hiccups that had never ceased to torment the headman, all the while he was sitting in the sack, became so bad that he started hicking and coughing very loudly. Ah, somebody's in there, they all cried, and rushed out of the house in fear. What the devil? Why are you running around like crazy? Said Chaub, coming in the door. Oh, Papa, said Oksana, there's somebody in the sack. In the sack? Where did you get this sack? The blacksmith left him in the middle of the road, they all said at once. Well, Chaub thought to himself, didn't I say so? What are you afraid of? He said. Let's see. Now then, my man, never mind if we don't call you by your full name. Get out of the sack. The headman got out. Ah! Cried the girls. The headman was in it too, Chaub said to himself in perplexity, looking him up and down. Fancy that. Eh? He could say nothing more. The headman was no less confused himself and did not know how to begin. Must be called out, he said, addressing Chaub. A bit nippy, Chaub replied. And I must ask, what do you grease your boots with, mutton fat or tar? He had not meant to say that. He had meant to ask, how do you, the head man, get into this sack? But without knowing why himself, he had said something completely different. Tar's better, said the head man. Well, goodbye, Chaub. And, pulling down his ear flaps, he walked out of the house. Why did I ask so stupidly what he greases his boots with? Chaub said, looking at the door through which the headman had gone. That's Salaka, putting such a man into a sack. A devil of a woman, fool that I am. But where's that cursed sack? I threw it in the corner. There's nothing else in it, said Oksana. I know these tricks. Nothing else in it. Give it to me. There's another one sitting in it. Shake it out well. What? Nothing, cursed woman. and to look at her just like a saint, as if she never put anything non-Lenten near her lips. But let us leave Chaub to pour out his vexation at leisure, and go back to the blacksmith, because it must already be past 8 o'clock outside. And we'll pause there.